Welcome to Breaking Banks Africa. I'm Matteo Rizzi, and together with my co-host Nadine Zoro, let us take you on a journey of entrepreneurship, innovation, and vibrant ecosystems Africa has to showcase. More than 1 in 4 people will be African by 2050, this continent being already the youngest of the planet. You can't miss these stories. This is Breaking Banks Africa. Let's roll.
Hello everyone, welcome to Breaking Banks Africa. This is our third podcast for this new series. And today we are talking about entrepreneurs and their brands. We will be talking today to our invite guest. We'll start maybe by asking her to present herself. How are you, Divine?
Hi, Nadine. How are you?
Fine, thank you. Welcome to our podcast.
Thank you.
Hey guys, what about me? Oh, nobody introduced me.
Oh, sorry.
Hello.
I forgot. Sorry.
Who do you think I am? Like a spectator here, free?
Sorry. Let's start again.
No. We're not starting again. This is exactly the beauty of Breaking Banks. So the good news is that I suppose that the Breaking Banks family knows who I am. So hey, today we are actually two hosts against a guest. So it's I like it, but. Thank you, Nadine, for introducing me to this Breaking Bank episode.
Thank you, Matteo. So I'm with my lovely co-host, Matteo, will also be with us with Divine. So Divine, could you please introduce yourself to our lovely audience?
Hi, everyone. So my name is Nadine Muragijimana. I know Matteo likes to call me Divine because my French is still lacking. So, but I am from Burundi, and I've spent the last 2 decades or so working with entrepreneurs in the US and Africa now. Actually, for the last decade, I've spent most of my time in the continent. Really working at the intersection between marketing, technology, entrepreneurship, and above all, building brands and really helping entrepreneurs build what I like to call impactful and long-lasting brands. And so I've seen just how over the years brands have evolved and how entrepreneurs are also starting to leverage brand story, but also just their strategy around how they tell their stories and how they use technology to grow their businesses. So I'm really excited to have this conversation today.
Yes, and I think brands is like such a big thing. I think we don't even have ideas of what brands are. And I think a lot of our entrepreneurs are struggling on how to not only create a strong brand, but also how to communicate the brand to their audience. And I know, Divine, you have a rich history of collaborating with African entrepreneurs to enhance their brand narrative. So could you please share with us some of your insights into the unique challenges that you observe and also opportunities that African startups can face when it comes to branding and how they work on the strategic storytelling?
Absolutely. I think over the years, I think one of the things, and it's not just in Africa, I think brand marketing is almost the first thing. So that businesses, especially early entrepreneurs, it's almost either the first thing that they don't think about or the last thing that they'll think about, or the first thing they can't when it comes to their budget. But I think one of the biggest, if I compare my work in the US and then I compare that to what I'm doing in Africa and working with some of the entrepreneurs, I think I've narrowed the biggest challenge to scarcity. And it's just that if you look at the market, like Africa is highly fragmented. And I think more fragmented than if you look at Europe and in the US, like Africa is just deeply, deeply fragmented, where you have customer trust and awareness that is very low. So one of the biggest challenges that you are an entrepreneur working with limited resources. You have to educate the market from scratch. I think the work, for example, that has been done in Europe or in the US, African entrepreneurs have to start from scratch. And they have to do that by themselves because there's no ecosystem that is actually doing the education. So you have the amount of money that you have to build a brand, you have to spend half of it on actual education. And then, of course, just the, cultural and linguistic diversity. Although I think this is not unique to Africa particularly, but there's no one size fits all. So you can't, it's not like in the US where you can run one ad across the entire country. You have to think about if you're running in one market. In one market, you have maybe 5 languages you have to consider. And then if you are running in 3 or 4 markets, then that's probably triple the amount of ads that you actually have to run. So you have to spend quite a little bit of money when it comes to building a brand. But I think this also now presents an opportunity, which is, the thing about Africa is that we have a very rich culture. And because of that, we have the opportunity so brands have opportunities to humanize very complex solutions for their customers. You're almost starting from scratch. So your failure point is not very high. So you have a lot of room to play around how you communicate, how you educate. You're coming in, you've leapfrogged technology. So there's a lot of technology there to help you actually drive education. But then you can really build, once you really get it, your customers stick with you. I think the African context is a bit interesting because once a customer sticks to a brand, they tend to, your long-term value of that customer is higher than if, for example, you're doing the same ad or the same concept in the US. So we have also an opportunity to create movements. So good brands, if you see what Safaricom is doing in Kenya, for example, the MTNs, Yoko in South Africa, just the idea that you can create a movement out of any ad is something that I think we haven't taken advantage of, but something that is very unique to Africa.
Yes,
I actually have... I just wondering whether or not when you talk about the creators economy, right? And we said that there will be 100 million of players in this new creators economy by 2030. It is actually a genuine question. It's not any scheduled or pre-prepared one. I wonder whether or not, especially in Africa, because the creators economy is so important, building a brand as an individual and as a content creator and building the brand as a company, sometimes the two things are very intertwined, right? Because when we talk about creators economy, we're talking about single creators of digital content, whether there are coaches or YouTube video creators or content providers. So I think that there is a lot of lacking culture in what does it mean to create a brand for yourself as a content creator, and how to create a brand for the business you are creating. Don't you think?
I mean, I think our content, when it comes to the creator economy, we are a little bit behind. I mean, I'm behind in the sense of we haven't gotten to the levels where you're seeing. So, and I use TikTok as an example because I look at TikTok when I'm in the US, in Europe, and then I look at TikTok when I'm in Africa. So we have a lot of creators, so to speak, not enough. So we're not like the monetization of the influencers, for example, is it's absurd if you look at what's going on in other places and what's going on in Africa. So there is, I think, Matteo, my answer to that is that a business, in a sense, you have to be a creator now. You have to actually be a brand and a creator at the same time. And then when you're an individual, you also have to be a creator and a business. So in that sense, the lessons of branding almost becomes the same because one, our MSMEs, for example, if you look at the segment, the MSME segment, for example, the business owners have to build their own brand and they have to be essentially creators for them to get the right stories across for their businesses. And so you find that actually it's a creator has to be a business or have to figure out how to become a business. They have to build their brand for a business. And a business now, and which is a beautiful thing for me, is that businesses now have become creators themselves. We talk about, I think there was a report that came out that now every business is trying to figure out how to do a podcast or, all right, so it's I think it's an interesting time for branding because there's an opportunity for both individuals to build an entire business out of content creation and brand building, and for businesses to do also to the same, which wasn't the case. And it becomes a bit complex if you drill it down, but yeah.
Yeah, I think where I agree totally with you, Divine, is just on the idea of even people understanding that marketing and branding, there's an economic value behind it. You know, they see it as a fashion thing. They see it as if it's something to be seen instead of something that has some monetary value and that there's some return on investment. And what people are struggling a lot to do here, especially companies, is really to bring out the return on investment when it comes to branding.
Yeah.
And even local companies or local marketers are finding issues to measure the results of their campaign and show the monetary values behind it. So even when we support entrepreneurs and we talk to them about marketing and communication, that's always the question is, I don't really see how the money is coming in, right?
Yeah.
What are your advice for entrepreneurs when it comes to branding and how it's important when it comes to monetizing your business and making it bigger, or for them to really see that value?
And I think it's a misconception. So, and brand and marketing are two, although they're in the same family, they're very different. When you're talking about brand, and our entrepreneurs, I drill this down. So I run like SME clinics every week on the weekends, and I have to tell them brand building is a long term. You have to invest in your brand, but you have to start with purpose. And so brands that have figured out how to essentially tune into their purpose and communicate from a place of purpose, because that's what audiences are connecting to. I think forever, I think we've been preaching this for like brand and purpose has to be communicated over and over again. It has to be consistent. So you have to start from day one. It doesn't have to be expensive, and brand building doesn't have to be expensive from day one. I think when you look at a brand as a subset, then you look at marketing. Then marketing is where you're now building actually product. You think about product market fit, go to market. You think about how you monetize a product, because that's where marketing becomes interesting, especially growth oriented marketing. And I think if you don't separate these two, you will do a lot of brand building activities, hoping that they give you money the next day, when you're actually supposed to be doing some tactical, strategic but tactical work to build or reach your clients and so forth. I think people just confuse those two. And entrepreneurs in Africa, I have found that, and we marketers at fault. I think we don't have enough training, I think, in Africa most of the marketers have been trained as communication people. And then they're being brought to do marketing. And then you find that businesses think marketing communication is marketing. And therefore, you hire the wrong people, you hire the wrong talent. For example, you're looking for the wrong skills. And then you spend money and you can't see the return. So if you hire the right people, they'll be able to tell you the difference between how much are you spending on brand and how long it's going to take for you to get your return, vis-a-vis when you're actually needing to do things like product marketing, which gives you return a bit quicker than when you're doing brand building, for example.
Yes, thank you, Divine. And you are giving us great insight. I think even myself, I get confused sometimes. Branding, marketing, communication, and we hear all of this word, content creation, mixing the graphic designer with the content creator and the branding and everything. So we're all struggling here. Thank you for enlightening us on this. And but Divine, you've had a very extensive experience actually in high leadership marketing roles, and you're also the editor-in-chief at Applause Africa. How do you see media and marketing really converging to shape Africa's fintech narrative, and also in educating and engaging consumers in the fintech space specifically?
That's an interesting question and such a timely. I think it just goes back to what we were talking about just a few seconds ago. But more than ever, media, marketing, they're no longer separate. So you can't now do media by itself, and you can't do marketing by itself. There's a lot of, they go hand in hand. So if you're going to, for example, because at the end of the day, whatever you're doing as a brand, the biggest thing, there are three things you need to do on a long term. You need to build credibility for your brand. You need to drive education. So if you're in Africa, this is very critical, actually. And then you need to shape public perception. And public perception could be if you look at your market segment, so maybe shaping your market segment perception. And at any given point in time between media and marketing, you have to figure out which one comes at play to build credibility, which one do you use to drive education, and which one you need to shape the market segment perception so that you can drive adoption. And I think as we're seeing fintechs and just general, like the technology space in Africa, it's evolving to, in more than any other place in the world, to solve really urgent and real world problems. So if you, for example, and I tell businesses nowadays that you are actually in the space of, you can't do business and then CSR as a separate thing, because they're in Africa, they're intertwined. You're solving urgent, real world problems, or real problems that, if, for example, if you look at fintech, it's access to credit for businesses. Insurance, getting people to uptake insurance, payments, very utility. So you're solving very real problems, and therefore you have to figure out how to tell that story in a way that somebody can understand. But I think fintech in Africa is a bit misunderstood, actually. And therefore we have to figure out how to tell the story in a way that people will understand, will connect, and then adopt. And I don't think we've done a really good job at doing that, honestly. I don't think we've done a good job in demystifying what solutions are out there. I don't think we've really done a good job on shaping the narrative in the way that the outside world, and especially investors, will actually understand. And so I think we have even though media marketing is converging, I don't think as African entrepreneurs, and especially within the tech fintech space, I don't think we've really actually done enough to collectively tell the story, to demystify what's going on in the industry, to demystify what solutions are actually available and the different types of solutions that are available in the continent. And I don't think we've done enough to build the trust and give the right access and financial empowerment. So we have a bit of work to do there.
And it's about money, right? Money is what is fintech is about money. It's a very sensitive topic. Not only in Africa, I think even here, like, for entrepreneurs, when you even ask them for their revenue themselves, they don't even want to give you numbers. So think about an individual trusting you the money and your solution that you haven't tested, and then in the future, and so many things that are very sensitive for individuals. So fintech is a very challenging space, and I'm sure Matteo has more to share about fintech with his experience with it. Yeah.
No, actually, I have a stop, so I'll ask a question to Nadine, and then I'll let you, Nadine, continue, because I really would like for you ladies to talk about the Inclusive FinTech Forum that just happened in Africa. But before, you're both familiar with the work we are doing with Time Pledge in upskilling, African talents. And, while you were talking, Divine, I was thinking, okay, if we had to develop an upskilling course for marketing experts, especially into the fintech space, what would be, in your opinion, the 2-3 pillars, that we have to make sure we teach more about? Or in other words, if you reverse the question, where do you think are actually the biggest gap, in terms of talent, when we talk about these young entrepreneurs that are probably maybe like business-wise very skilled and technical while very skilled, but if you don't study marketing, or if someone doesn't tell you how to do this, it doesn't come natural, right? So, what would be your suggestion on this?
Top 3. I think the first, and this one is, I preach it a lot. And sorry, the sun has come all of a sudden in my space.
That's beautiful. Don't worry.
So I think the three things. The first thing I always say, purpose. Like, we don't teach enough around, because brand building, at the end of the day, at the heart of brand building is purpose. And most businesses, I think, I found, they don't actually know why they're doing the work they're doing, or what they're doing, why they're doing it, why they are solving that problem. And enough marketers don't talk about this. And I think it's also because we don't go to school and then they teach you practical, technical marketing. They don't teach you how to actually guide entrepreneurs on how to find and drill down to actually what do they need to do and why. It's the thing that Simon Sinek preaches all the time, and I think we don't get to talk about it because it's too fluffy. So I think really drilling down on what is branding, what is actually, and how can branding and how can technology actually be very useful in brand building. I think the second part is data-driven marketing. We get taught on the usual, which is the marketing we're being taught is how to take a product to market, how to do a very good ad, but we are not actually taught that the reason why entrepreneurs kind of don't invest in marketing is because they don't see the ROI. So data-driven marketing is not something, or being able to lead with data. I've seen marketers who are fantastic are the ones who are able to lead with data. So data in marketing is very important. And then actually then teaching people how to create content, compelling content, storytelling. Even though in Africa, we are natural storytellers, we can talk for days, right? We don't know how to tell our stories. We haven't figured out how to be very purposeful in our storytelling. I think those three are skills that every marketer needs to figure out, needs to hone in, and needs to lead with.
Yes, I totally agree with her on this. You wanted to add, or I was going to add more?
No. I just wanted to say that I will leave you right now. It's okay. Nadine, you have the hard task to wrap up the episode after the last question, but I leave you, Divine, in very good hands. Okay.
All
See you
right.
guys.
Thank you, Matteo. I totally agree with you, Divine, on this. I agree on the data part. I think for me, that's the biggest thing that people need to understand.
Yeah.
And even when they're doing the storytelling, they need to understand that they need data that are real, because we like the emotional storytelling. And I mean, we are good storytellers, but we use a lot of emotion in our story instead of like strong data that can really convince people. And maybe I think in marketing, what people really need to learn and what is missing in our market is really the concept of growth hacking, and really thinking about a very purposeful marketing that is going to give numbers.
Yes.
You know, there's brands, like you mentioned, but also if we don't see results today, especially in this environment where people live on a day-to-day basis, they want to see things today when you are talking about them. So we need to find a way to have actions that generate revenue on a very short term, so people can start trusting marketing more as an important driving force for business growth.
No, absolutely. I mean, I think content, I mean, when you think about, and there's some things that are very easy, and I teach my team a lot about this, that whenever team, so as a fractional CMO, I get a chance to teach my different teams and mentor different teams. And the biggest thing I tell them is you need to figure out, there are quick wins. Brand is a long term. When you need to build a brand, it's a long term and it's painful. I'm not going to lie. It's a very painful process, because it takes, and as a leader, as a marketing leader, you have to always push for your ideas, make sure that you're being hard and so forth. But the biggest thing is that you have to find also quick wins, because money has to have purpose. When money is being invested, it's not that it's coming in the millions of dollars. So it has to have purpose. So you have to find very quick wins. And that is in marketing growth. And that's where the data comes in. And that's where you're able to show data. But I think the other thing we don't do is push entrepreneurs to be very purposeful about what do they want. Because everybody will want, for example, I see businesses and they come in and say they want followers on LinkedIn. I'm like, listen, I can give you followers on LinkedIn. I just don't know what you're going to do with those followers. And also, what type of followers do you want? There's some people who come in and they're like, okay, we want the product to scale in the next 1 year. The product is not ready to scale. And so there's a lot of push. Or collaboration between marketers and entrepreneurs to ensure that marketing has purpose, and then that there is very strategic brand building activities that are consistent, that you don't touch, so to speak. You improve, but you don't touch, because it's a long-term investment.
I totally aligned on this. And I mean, entrepreneurs, we have so many things to say to them when it comes to marketing. And one thing that I also observe in the market here is really, you talked about personal branding and the businesses, is a lot of entrepreneurs, I think they get into personal branding so much that the individual becomes bigger than its brand. And what would you say about the danger of that, and how people can really be careful about how they do that and they manage it properly?
I don't know if I mind actually nowadays. I used to mind that entrepreneurs, but I mind when entrepreneurs are not purposeful about how they're building their brands towards their business. And I think when you build as an entrepreneur, when you build the right brand, and if you have the personality for it, then it can be very, very useful, especially in the early days in your fundraising and you're getting the customer's attention and so forth. So there is a purpose to entrepreneurs building their brand. The one thing I mind is when people copy each other. So because not every entrepreneur it comes in, there are different shapes and sizes and things that they about. And people can sniff when you are trying too much and you're trying to essentially lie to them, right? So I love when entrepreneurs are leaning in the things they're passionate about, and those things that they're passionate about are aligned to what they're doing in their business, and then building their brands to drive adoption for their business or brand awareness for their business. I do mind when the entrepreneur is essentially building a brand that is false to who they are.
It's really authenticity, really.
Yes, and that's when you have a problem. We talk about. I didn't want to use the word authenticity because we use it so many times that I think it's lost its meaning altogether. But I think that's it. Like just being very authentic and being true to the passions that you have. There's nothing wrong with a business owner, entrepreneur building a brand that's outside the business, but there is something wrong when somebody tries to copy or tries to do something that is not true to who they are.
Yeah, and normally it should be some alignment, right? Because it's your business and you are the owner. So normally you should see the alignment between your brand and what your business is doing, and also your personal field of interest and the activities that you engage in. So it also shows sometimes that some kind of consistency that makes people really trust your brand a bit more, if that is really aligned. So we're learning so much from you, Dibi, and I think I don't even want to finish this conversation because I have so many questions I think entrepreneurs ask me that I would like to ask you. But with our audience today, we have a short time. And Breaking Banks was really pleased and happy to talk to Divine today and learn from experience. So we're going to close very quickly, Divine, with your last word. If there was one thing that you wanted entrepreneur to remember about this conversation, what would it be?
Wow, that's a you're giving a marketer. You're giving a final thought. I mean, I think we've talked a little bit about that a lot, but I think the biggest thing is aligning marketing to purpose is one of the biggest lessons that I'm teaching people. I'm teaching entrepreneurs a lot nowadays. Align your marketing, align your brand to your purpose. Don't do things because they're popular. Don't do things because everybody's doing them, but do them because they align to your purpose. And I think if you can convince your customers or your customer segment that the thing and the problem you're solving for them is true to your purpose, then the adoption is a bit higher, because that means your storytelling is authentic, your brand building is true to the first of all, it connects to the audience very well, because that's what purpose does. And then your marketing is a bit easier, because then you're actually marketing something that you love, you're marketing something that you believe in, and it's easy for customers to tell when things they can tell BS from authentic things. So I think it's always good when brands and entrepreneurs can lead from purpose and can connect their brand to that, connect their market to that, and ensure that they are preaching a solution and what is in it for the customers, and making sure the customer is the hero and not them. I think that those three things generally usually work.
Thank you so much, Divine. Thank you. And it's about purpose. It's about branding. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Breaking Banks Africa. I'm Nadine Zoro, and it was a pleasure to have you with my co-host, Matteo Rizzi. Thank you and have an amazing week. And thank you, Divine. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Nadine.
Thanks for listening to Breaking Banks Africa, a Provoke Media podcast in cooperation with timepledge.org. Don't forget to share us out or shout out across social media. If there is something or someone you would like to hear on our cast, let us know. See you next month on Breaking Banks Africa.